Welcome back to the Great Indian AI Podcast channel. Ready for another deep dive?
Always.
Great. Today, we're going to be looking at the book of Exodus.
Oh, excellent choice.
Yeah, we're going to be focusing on the first 40 chapters. So whether you've heard these stories before or just starting to explore, like the Bible, this deep dive is for you? I mean, come on, Exodus, it's not just some old text, right?
Right.
It's full of themes that are like super relevant even today.
Oh, absolutely.
Liberation, faith, how societies are structured, law, the idea of like the divine itself.
It's a story that keeps resonating, I think, across cultures and time.
Totally. So stick with us, right? We're going to uncover fascinating details. You might even have some like aha moments.
I think so. What often gets missed is how much Exodus actually sets the stage for what came after.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, and not just, in religious thought, but in ethical and legal systems across so many different cultures. I mean, Exodus is a touchstone for, understanding the Sabbath and even just the idea of a covenant.
Right.
And then there's how moral law is framed. It's amazing. You'll see these echoes, throughout history.
So, okay, let's set the scene.
Okay.
We're in ancient Egypt, and the Israelites, who were once, welcomed guests, have become slaves. And this is under a new pharaoh who's, a little freaked out by how many there are.
You could almost call it a case study in how fear of the other can just warp a society.
Oh, that's a good point.
It doesn't matter how powerful they are. We see it happen over and over again in history.
Yeah.
One group feels threatened. Sometimes it's numbers, sometimes it's influence, sometimes it's just, being different.
Right.
And then, bam, oppression becomes the tool for, supposedly keeping things under control.
And in Exodus, you see Pharaoh's insecurity lead to some, truly brutal stuff.
It's tough to read about.
Forced labor, building these treasure cities, Ramses.
Yeah.
Lives just made bitter with hard bondage.
Backbreaking work under that scorching sun.
Yeah.
The kind of toil that breaks bodies and spirits.
But here's the thing. The Israelites, they don't just fade away.
No.
They actually multiply, which of course makes Pharaoh even more paranoid.
Of course. It makes you wonder, though, right? If all that oppression actually ended up strengthening their sense of who they were as a people.
That's a good point.
Often it's in those shared hardships that a community's bonds are really forged, don't you think?
That's a great point.
Oh, yeah.
And so this is where our main character comes in, Moses.
Ah, yes.
Born an Israelite, but he's raised in the lap of luxury in Pharaoh's house.
Talk about being caught between two worlds.
I know, right?
That upbringing, though, it had to give him a really unique perspective.
You think?
Oh, yeah. Insight into how Egyptian power worked.
Yeah.
But then on the other hand, this deep connection to the suffering of his people.
Right.
A recipe for internal conflict, that's for sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that conflict boils over when he sees this Egyptian overseer beating a Hebrew slave.
It's a pivotal moment.
He's overwhelmed with this righteous anger, right?
Yeah.
Kills the Egyptian, hides the body.
I mean, this one act says so much about who Moses is.
Definitely.
His sense of justice, compassion, but it also makes him, a wanted man.
Big time. Pharaoh wants him dead, so Moses flees to Midian.
Seeking refuge.
It's fascinating. This act of violence, even if it was justified, sends him into exile.
But it's in that isolation, in the quiet of Midian, that his true transformation starts to happen. And that's where he encounters God.
Okay, so picture this. Moses is tending sheep, just minding his own business, and all of a sudden, he sees this bush, and it's completely engulfed in flames. But it's not burning up.
The burning bush.
Yeah, and God speaks to him from this fire, revealing his plan to free the Israelites from Egypt. And guess who he's that? He chooses to lead this whole exodus.
Your fugitive shepherd.
Right.
You have to wonder why Moses, right?
Totally.
He took a life, he's filled with self-doubt, definitely not looking to lead anything.
Not at all.
But maybe that's exactly what God saw in him.
What do you mean?
The potential that Moses himself didn't even grasp. That potential for leadership, born out of empathy, and that burning desire for justice.
Wow.
Yeah.
But Moses resists at first.
Oh, big time.
Full of doubts.
Who am I to go to Pharaoh? Classic.
But God reassures him, promises to be with him every step of the way. And to really prove it, he gives Moses some wild signs to show Pharaoh. Remember the staff that turns into a snake?
Yeah. The symbolism there is pretty cool if you think about it.
How so?
Well, the serpent, it often represents transformation, shedding its skin to be reborn, you know?
Okay, yeah.
Could that be a hint at the transformation, not just for Moses, but for, like, the whole Israelite nation?
Interesting.
Shedding slavery and becoming something new.
Makes you think.
It's definitely food for thought.
So armed with God's reassurance and his brother Aaron by his side, Moses heads back to Egypt to face Pharaoh.
The epic showdown is about to begin.
And if you want to find out what happens next, you're going to have to join us for part 2 right here on the Great Indian AI podcast channel.
Make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss it.
All right. Welcome back to the Great Indian AI podcast channel, picking up right where we left off in Exodus, with Moses and Aaron standing before Pharaoh, demanding freedom for the Israelites. You'd think after all that backbreaking labor, Pharaoh would be like, sure, see ya, wouldn't want to be
Well, power tends to, have a way of clouding judgment.
Yeah.
Pharaoh's pride, his stubbornness,
Yeah.
that unshakable belief in his own divine authority.
Right.
It all made him incredibly resistant to, well, any kind of challenge, especially coming from someone like Moses,
Yeah.
a former fugitive, daring to question his rule.
It's the ultimate power struggle, and it plays out like so dramatically. When Moses delivers God's message, let my people go so that they may hold a feast to me in the wilderness, Pharaoh basically laughs in his face.
He doesn't even acknowledge the God of the Hebrews, let alone consider releasing his entire workforce.
What a bruised ego.
It's striking how much the text emphasizes Pharaoh's just complete ignorance of the Lord. This isn't just about, political control. It's like spiritual blindness, a refusal to acknowledge any power greater than his own.
And that refusal, that defiance of God's will, sets the stage for, come on, one of the most iconic sequences in biblical history, the 10 plagues.
A cosmic showdown.
Totally. This demonstration of God's power that just systematically dismantles everything the Egyptians hold sacred.
You could almost see it as like a symbolic chess match. Each plague, a carefully calculated move.
I like.
Challenging Pharaoh's control, forcing him to confront, the might of the God of Israel.
First up, the Nile River. The lifeblood of Egypt literally turns to blood.
Fish die, the water becomes undrinkable, chaos everywhere.
Then come the frogs, swarms of them, invading homes, streets. Can you imagine?
And these initial plagues are fascinating because they target what the Egyptians worshipped.
Yeah.
The very things they considered divine.
The Nile as a source of life.
Right. Creatures like frogs, symbols of fertility. It's a direct attack on their belief system.
And it just keeps escalating. Lice, flies, livestock dying.
Painful boils, hail mixed with fire.
Destroying the land.
Yeah.
It's just this relentless assault on their comfort, their health, everything.
But Pharaoh, he's not giving in.
Nope.
His heart is hardened, refusing to see the power behind all of this.
The text keeps mentioning this hardened heart, right? Which has led to, centuries of debate.
Oh, absolutely. Some scholars, they interpret it as God actively hardening Pharaoh's heart,
Okay.
while others see it as Pharaoh's own stubbornness, leading him down this path
It really makes you think about free will.
versus divine intervention.
Big questions. But no matter who or what is hardening his heart, the plagues keep coming, each one more intense than the last. Then comes the plague of locusts, devouring every green plant, stripping the land bare.
Just imagine that despair, the desperation.
I know. Finally, Pharaoh cracks, begs Moses to end it, promises to let the Israelites go. But as soon as the locusts are gone, he goes back on his word.
This cycle of temporary repentance followed by more stubbornness, it's something we still see today, don't you think?
Oh, totally.
Even when we're faced with undeniable evidence, we cling to our old ways, the familiar narratives, even if they're leading us to destruction.
Such a powerful insight into human nature. But Pharaoh's double dealing leads to the final, most devastating plague, the death of the firstborn.
This one hits at the very core of their society, their families.
It's a reminder that even the most powerful ruler isn't immune to the consequences. And to protect the Israelites from this final plague, God instructs Moses to institute the Passover.
They have to mark their doorposts with the blood of a lamb, a symbol of their covenant with God.
And when the angel of death sees that mark, he passes over their homes.
Passover isn't just history.
Right.
It's a ritual that continues to this day, a testament to the power of faith and remembrance.
Imagine Pharaoh's grief, losing his own son, finally realizing what he's unleashed.
His resolve just crumbles.
He summons Moses and Aaron in the middle of the night. practically begging them to leave.
It's a huge turning point for both the Egyptians and the Israelites.
For sure.
A night of sorrow and reckoning for one, and the beginning of this long-awaited journey to freedom for the other.
The Israelites leave in a hurry, taking unleavened bread, whatever valuables they can grab.
It's interesting, right? They don't leave empty-handed. They take gold, silver, clothing they've asked for from the Egyptians. Some see it as, divine compensation for all their forced labor. Others as a way of stripping the Egyptians of their wealth and power. What do you think?
It definitely adds a whole other layer to their departure.
Absolutely.
But just when they think they've escaped, Pharaoh changes his mind. Again, he gathers his army, sets off in pursuit, determined to recapture all those who were once his slaves.
It's like that primal need to control, even when it's obvious that the old ways are falling apart.
So the Israelites are trapped, Pharaoh's army closing in behind them, and in front of them, the Red Sea, vast and impassable.
It's a moment of pure terror.
They cry out to Moses, accusing him of leading them to their deaths.
But Moses, firm in his faith, raises his staff.
And what happens next?
Well, a strong east wind blows all night, splitting the waters of the Red Sea,
creating a dry path for the Israelites to cross.
One of the most iconic scenes.
The symbolism is so powerful.
The sea, usually representing chaos, the unknown, it becomes a path to salvation. It's like a visual representation of God transforming obstacles into opportunities.
And how faith can get us through seemingly impossible situations is an image that stayed with people for thousands of years.
That sense of divine intervention, right when all hope seems lost.
And once the Israelites are safe on the other side, the waters rush back in, drowning Pharaoh's entire army.
The Israelites, seeing this display of power, are just in awe, filled with gratitude.
Their faith in God and in Moses as their leader is rock solid now. But they've escaped Pharaoh. They're free. Their journey, it's far from over.
The wilderness stretches before them,
filled with its own set of challenges and triumphs. This crossing of the Red Sea is huge.
It's the shift from slavery to freedom, from oppression to liberation, but it's also just the beginning of a whole new chapter, a journey through the wilderness. And that journey is going to test their faith and resilience in ways they can't even imagine.
All right, welcome back to the Great Indian AI podcast channel for the final part of our Exodus deep dive. We've seen the Israelites escape Egypt, the Red Sea parting, the whole thing. But now, in chapters 15 through 40, they're dealing with a new reality, the wilderness. It's kind of amazing how freedom, even after something so miraculous, it doesn't mean things are suddenly easy.
It's an important point. Crossing the Red Sea wasn't the end, just the beginning. This wilderness part, it's not just about, where they are geographically. It's about becoming a nation, a people bound to God. It's about the changes that happen inside when you're finally free on the outside.
And those changes, they don't come easy. First test, the basics. Water, food. Imagine yourself in the desert, sun beating down, thirsty. They get to this place, Mara, but the water's bitter. You can't drink it. What do? They complain. To Moses, of course.
Oh, the complaining. It's like a constant theme throughout this whole wilderness journey. It's human, though, isn't it? Things get tough. Who do we blame? The person trying to help us, naturally. It makes you wonder, is it just being uncomfortable? Or is it deeper, like struggling with faith, with not knowing what's next?
That's interesting. And it's not just water. They start missing the food back in Egypt. Forgetting how bad it was, just focused on being hungry now.
Yeah.
It's like they're pushing God's patience to the limit, but then...
God provides. Doesn't punish, provides. Manna from heaven, bread-like stuff, appears every morning. Water flowing from a rock. Quenching their thirst in this amazing way. It's powerful, Even when we doubt, complain, God's grace is still there.
Divine takeout. Shows how much God cares, but also... it's about teaching them to rely on something bigger than themselves, to trust.
It is a cosmic lesson in trust, surrender. Those are big themes in Exodus.
But it's not all just wandering around wondering what they'll eat. There are threats, like the Amalekites, these nomads who attack them. This is where we see a shift. It's not passive resistance anymore, it's defending their freedom actively.
And who leads the charge? Joshua, Moses' right-hand man. He gets them that victory, and it's like we're seeing a glimpse of the future, of him leading them into the promised land.
It's like freedom isn't just about escaping, it's about being willing to fight for it, against anyone who tries to take it away.
Absolutely. The fight for liberation, it rarely ends with one event. It's ongoing, needs vigilance, courage.
And while all this wandering, fighting is going on, Moses gets some advice he probably needed from his father-in-law, Jethro, the priests of Midian.
Jethro's watching Moses, right, judging disputes, teaching, leading, doing it all, and he recognizes burnout. His advice: delegate, empower others, appoint capable people for the smaller stuff so Moses can focus on the big picture, on communicating with God.
Timeless leadership advice, really. Even the best leader can't do everything themselves.
Exactly. It's about building a system that works, recognizing talent, making leadership shared, responsibility spread out.
Wise words. And speaking of leadership, the Israelites reached their destination, Mount Sinai. This is where the covenant between God and Israel becomes official. They're not just freed slaves anymore, they're chosen with a purpose, a destiny.
Talk about an entrance. God comes down on Mount Sinai, thunder, lightning, clouds. It's meant to inspire awe, make them understand how serious this covenant is.
I can practically feel the ground shake. God delivers the 10 Commandments. Those basic principles, the foundation of their moral code: thou shalt not kill, thou shalt not steal, honor your father and mother. Those ideas, they echo through time, influencing law, ethics, for thousands of years.
It's incredible, right? Those ancient words, they still matter to us today. They set the stage for how we think about justice, rights, responsibility as a society. We're still figuring those things out.
It shows how connected our present is to the past. And those 10 Commandments, just the start. There's a whole system of laws after that. Building altars, how to treat slaves, shaping their lives individually and as a community.
A blueprint for a just, righteous society, one that sees the dignity of all its members no matter their status.
But then things take a turn. Moses is up on Mount Sinai receiving those tablets, and down below, the people get antsy, impatient even.
It shows us something, doesn't it, about human nature? How quick we are to doubt, to want idols, especially when we're scared, when our leader's not around.
They panic. They tell Aaron, make us a god, something we can see. Worship. After all the miracles, back to idol worship. A golden calf, no less.
Faith isn't a steady thing. It's a journey. Ups, downs, moments of clarity, moments of doubt. Even those who've seen the divine can mess up when fear takes over.
Aaron caves. Leadership pressure, I guess. It's like a warning about compromising your values just to keep people happy. A leadership fail. And when Moses comes down, sees that golden calf, the partying, he's not happy, smashes the tablets in anger. Broken relationship with God right there.
You can understand his anger, can't you? He brings down these laws, this plan for their future, and they're dancing around a golden calf, huge letdown. But even angry, you see Moses' love for them.
He begs God to spare them, offers to sacrifice himself for their sin, taking one for the team, literally. It's powerful. True leadership, willing to carry the weight of what others did wrong.
Speaks volumes about Moses, his commitment, even when they're weak.
And God, moved by Moses, forgives them. Covenant renewed, new tablets. The journey goes on.
Transgression, repentance, renewal. It's a big theme in Scripture. We mess up, stray from the path, but there's always forgiveness, a chance to start over. Always a way back.
Now, the end of Exodus. Got to talk about the Tabernacle. A portable temple made exactly how God said. It housed the Ark of the Covenant, holding those tablets of the law.
It's not just a building, it's God's presence right there with them, a symbol of that covenant. A reminder that in the wilderness, even when they're lost, they're not alone.
And the book ends, this awesome scene, Tabernacle's done, God's presence comes down, a cloud filling it with glory. It's like confirmation. After the trials, the doubts, the rebellion, God's with them.
It's a beautiful image, divine presence, grace, the culmination of that long, hard journey.
So there it is, Exodus. Slavery to freedom, doubt to renewal, the everyday to the miraculous. We covered a lot, explored some deep stuff. Hope you found it as interesting as we did.
It's a story that keeps challenging us, inspiring us, makes us think about who we are, faith, the power of hope.
What did you take away from this deep dive? What stuck with you? How do these stories from so long ago connect to your life, your experiences? Leave a comment below. We want to hear your thoughts. If you enjoyed this episode, hit like, share, subscribe to the Great Indian AI Podcast channel. More deep dives coming soon into all kinds of fascinating topics. Until next time, keep seeking, keep questioning, keep exploring.